Welcome everyone to my chess stream here on lichess and Twitch. I'm International Master William Paschall. We're going to be having some fun today playing blitz and classical chess with unusual openings. Every Wednesday I do this weird Wednesday stream where we're playing stuff I wouldn't normally play. Slightly risky openings, gambits, lines I would normally not want to chance in a standard stream or over the board in tournaments. But stuff that's basically fun and interesting. So feel free to take part and enjoy some experimental openings with us here. Nothing too ridiculous. I don't want to play h4 on move 1 or some kind of totally silly openings. But anyway, this is a chance to play stuff we wouldn't normally play. So I'd like to welcome everyone. We have a couple challenges from Gilgamesh, who missed yesterday by one player. Unfortunately, I'm sorry about that. There's always somebody who's last in the queue to play blitz and classical chess here Monday to Friday, but unfortunately he didn't quite make it yesterday. But I'm glad he's here again today to play, and Constant Change, who's here most days as well. So in just a minute we're going to get started. I just want to remind everyone that I'm normally streaming Monday to Friday from 10 to 12:30, and we started a couple minutes late here today, but I'm finally up and running. We have a simul on Sunday that I'm doing every week now. It had been on pause for the holidays, but we are back to schedule. So this past Sunday we did a simul, 6:30 p.m. on Sundays, Central European time. So let's get started. I'm going to play Gilgamesh first, 5-3 standard. Don't forget to remind me to play unusual opening, because sometimes I'll forget and we'll go back to our standard stuff. So here in game 1, oftentimes I'll play like a first move. That's unusual for me. Let's try knight to c3. And now d5. So I think this is probably the most common reply to knight to c3, and we could play d4, of course, transposing to a Veresov, but I think e4 is more in keeping with the spirit of the left knight or Dunst opening. Lichess is the name of the book that was written by a German or a Dutch player, I'm not sure. Soronche. I guess that's German. That was a German guy who wrote the book on the Lichess. D4. This isn't the move I prefer, but it probably is the most common. You have to like closed structures, I think, to play D4. I prefer to play more open positions in general. I also play the Caro-Kann in Scandinavian and Alekhines defense, so D takes E is a little more interesting for me personally when I'm playing black. But I think that d4 is probably the main move here. And I suppose white could play anything. I mean, even knight b5 is playable for white, but knight e2 is, I believe, the main line. It's kind of like a King's Indian Mar del Plata. It could theoretically transpose. In the King's Indian Mar del Plata variation, black is playing the King's Indian and the knight bounces from c6 back to e7. I mean, the same concept here. Gilgamesh has an advantage because I don't know the theory on this opening very well. So I'm basing my play on a few games I've seen in magazines and a handful of games I've played in blitz with white, basically. The Van Geet. Okay, so this is the other name. The Dunst opening, Lichess or Van Geet. I think it might even have another name. Of course, the Dutch guy is going to side with Van Geet. E5. And that's a debate altogether right there. I mean, maybe black can consider other options like knight c6 or even c5. But I have the feeling that e5 is the main line. I mean, that I believe I know that. I don't think about this every day, obviously. So I mean, you could attack the head of the pawn chain with something like c3, but d3, knight g3 looks a bit awkward for white. So, I mean, f4 might be a move here, and it kind of makes some sense. I would be a little bit concerned about maybe knight f6. Does that make sense? f4, knight f6, f takes e, knight takes e4. Maybe that's one possible line. Sometimes black plays d3. If knight f6, knight g4. So this is a blitz game. I have to play a little bit faster than would normally be the case. I'm going to play d3. I'm certain that this is not the main line, but structurally, this move makes sense. I mean, we don't want to allow d3. We're prepared to reinforce our pawn on e4 and play for f4. But from what I remember, I mean, I think f4 is the main line, and white might have other variations, like perhaps it's even possible to play something like g3. Constant Change, welcome. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, guys. I had a kind of really crappy morning, but I'm going to make the best out of it. And there's no reason the day can't get better from here on out. So hopefully it's going to start to be a good day. c5 and... Okay, so this actually could transpose to a King's Indian Petrosian variation. Actually, not Petrosian variation. Well, Mar del Plata. With a knight on c3, it can be a Petrosian variation, but whatever. Alright, so c5. Gilgamesh reluctant to block in his pawn on c7. It's reasonable. So, not a lot of time again. I think I best play faster. Alright, let's go for f4. Alternative plan would be g3 with the idea of maybe bishop h3, trading the white squared bishops in one go. You know, sometimes in the King's Indian you play bishop g7 and later on you play bishop h6 to trade the bad blocked in bishop for the good bishop, but I can play maybe bishop h3 in one shot. This would save me a tempo in the long term. It's the same as playing bishop a6 in the French defense. You have a bad bishop, bishop a3 in some lines of the Dutch stonewall and whatnot. So this idea of trading the bad bishop on h3 or a3 or h6, it's pretty common. Maybe this mediocre morning for me can transpose into a good day. There's absolutely no reason why not. Okay, knight c6. And once again, you know, knight f3 is obviously a move, but I do have to resolve this bishop. So let's go for this g3 idea. I know that all of you guys are familiar with that have watched the stream before know how much I'm becoming like really sick of putting knights on g3, g6, b6, and b3. So not to mention the fact that you're moving the same piece twice and inducing something like h5, h4, which can be unpleasant in my experience. Knight g3, yeah. The bishop is better coordinated this way. There is a factor to consider here. The factor to consider would be kind of an advanced positional idea, but you know, the fact that he can play f5 at some point and that I don't have really effective control over e4. This is a dangerous pawn sacrifice in some lines. If like bishop takes h3, knight takes h3, f5, pawn takes f5, e4. It doesn't work here right away, but keep in mind the situation of the white knights when you're playing the King's Indian or whatever. I mean, my knights don't have a good way to control e4. If somehow that became an issue, I was thinking about even like bishop takes h3, knight takes h3, f5, and sometimes my knight goes to g5 and whatnot. So we're a little bit tied up here. My queen is not really in the game. There's an argument for I don't know what my plan is here, honestly. Manual castling looks really bad. Okay, this move is bad. This move is bad. You should take with the queen. You have nasty threats on the diagonal here. I think that was a clear mistake. It also was supporting f5. He should absolutely take with the queen, and I don't really like my game after that. I've done something wrong. Like in that position after queen takes, knight f3, queen h3 is kind of annoying, for example. So now white's position is okay, I think, after knight f3, and I can try to castle kingside. After queen takes c8, I don't like my game. You know, here it's like equal, but in that position, now a4 is an aggressive plan. But objectively playing on the wrong side of the board. So let's just get out of here. Time is short, and he stopped me from playing a4. Yeah, maybe I should have taken my opportunity to play a4 there. Gilgamesh. I've lost one to Gilgamesh. Oh, Gilgamesh is from Hungary. I forgot that Gilgamesh was a Hungarian player. This is a player who's relatively, new to the stream, what I'm trying to say. And I forgot, like, this was that particular player who was relatively new. Interesting move here, bishop a5. I'm about to lose on time. I don't like my position. Trade-off, this bishop wasn't really a good idea. Gilgamesh is playing really well. Crap. Queen g4. Hanging on by a thread. Not a good game by me. Not a bad game by Gilgamesh. I'm sure he missed some opportunities, but he's played pretty credibly. This is kind of a tough one. Part of me wanted to play a3 just to kind of immobilize his pawns there. Then on the other hand, the open file seems kind of vital. We've got a good knight and the 7th rank. Gilgamesh quite aggressive. have no idea how to make progress here. I was thinking about this. Okay, well, Gilgamesh melted down in time pressure after a very good struggle. It was totally better for black most of the game until the end, and then it was probably equal, a tiny bit better for white, but he just panicked in the last 10 seconds. So not a player who understands. I'm not a player who understands the white side of the Van Geet. Obviously, that is the conclusion of this. This game was not great. All right. We need a little work on our Van Geet theory. Guys, we are playing openings we don't really play normally here, so my results are going to be a little bit iffy. I'm a player who does do better with things that I know really well. E4, but I like to have fun, so we are playing different stuff. I try to play kind of unusual openings. Against Constant Change, he's played well against me lately. What can I play here against Constant Change? Let's try the Owen defense. I never really played the Owen defense. I prefer to play the St. George with A6 and B5. It's a little bit more active for black, although a little bit more risky. I thought we'll try the Owen defense. He flagged me on 12-22 last year. Blue Crow, Weird Wednesday. How did he win the last game? Yeah, he's pretty fast. Gilgamesh nearly flagged me again. I was not happy with this game. I felt like I was under pressure the entire way. And okay, right out the gate, like, I think that D3 is, I know that it's not the main line, but I don't know the main line, so and then he played C5, which actually, you know, seems to me like not the most aggressive. But he didn't even play the best move. I mean, probably queen takes C8 in the previous game. And there, instead of trading bishops on C8, maybe I should have actually played, I could have actually played something like King F1, King G2 to kind of shore up my white squares. But I don't know if anybody here, I don't know what to compare it to. It reminds me a little bit of, I don't know if you know the French defense, the advanced French defense, where black goes like queen b6 and bishop d7 and bishop b5. You go to all this lengths to like try to trade off your bad bishop, and then white can sacrifice pawns with like c4 and d5, and it gets really scary for black. And it's the same kind of thing there. You go out of your way to play bishop h3 and try to trade off your bad bishop, but in so doing, white loses some control of the center, and I was terrified that he'd have something like f5 and e4. It happens in the Czech Benoni, or lines like the Czech Benoni too, where the other side can make some really aggressive sort of pawn sacrifices. Alright, so back to the game here. Knight d2. This is not a bad move, but I think it is an inaccuracy. I myself have played like queen e2 here. The knight doesn't need to commit itself to d2 so early. It can go to c3 in some key lines later on. So I feel like this should be better for me than queen e2, though I don't know the lines very well. E6 followed by c5. Looks like the standard thing to do here. Oh, by the way, instead of knight f6, it would have been interesting to play g6. You can do a hippopotamus. And interestingly enough, having researched this a little bit last week, I noticed that the master Isidor Gunsberg did this back in the 1890s. So the hippopotamus had its birth in the late 1800s, or maybe even before that. But anyway, a lot of games are lost. Obviously, the collection of scores of games back in the 1800s wasn't that efficient. So I imagine there's some games that have been neglected. Ironically, in that position with g6, this move order exactly, by the way, this position was played in analysis by Roy. No, I wanted to say no. The Italian Greco actually did analysis or had a game that he had recorded with g6 in like 1620. So that's really funny. But anyway, enough about that. Let's just play chess. So this goes back to 1620, at least, the g6 idea. Unless it was fabricated later on. There's a gambit with f5 or something. That is possible. Yeah. f5 is definitely an idea, as in the English defense. My only fault with Constant Change, he's a dangerous player and has played well against me. My only fault with him is that his openings they're not up to snuff. I think he could do a lot better if his openings were more sharp and more fine-tuned. He doesn't play as sharply as he could. But anyway, what do we want to do here? Knight c6. You could play d5, but it leads to a kind of bad French. Not really sure. I mean, I'm used to playing this kind of position with a pawn on b5 and a pawn on a6. And in that kind of position, I have more options available to me. But here, not so much. See the bad bishop. The bad bishop again. If d5, my bishop is blocked, and we'd like to exchange it with something like queen c8 and bishop a6. As in the King's Indian last game. If not knight c6, what is black's plan? I mean, for example, I don't really understand. I mean, d5. Now things are more interesting. What we have here is a position that I've played with a position. Sometimes I don't enunciate enough. We have a position that I've played with white in the Slav, where I don't play d4. I play knight f3, c4, and then like e3. And I have had the same position with colors reversed, but a tempo less in most cases. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, knight to b4. I want to play knight a6. Bishop a6, knight b4 and bishop a6. I want to welcome everybody. Yeah, I mean, maybe playing the hippo is a little bit safer in some respects. Your king side is more solid with the fianchetto, or fianchetto as you like. What is there some sort of trick here? After bishop a6, rook e1, knight d3. There shouldn't be any sort of trick, right? I feel like I've fallen for some kind of trick. Okay, I mean, white has a lead in development. That's true enough. I was a little concerned about queen e2 in this position. sounds really ridiculous. I mean, it looks really insane, but just not really sure, because no, that doesn't work. I can take on e1. Never mind. All right, so never mind. An unfounded fear. Okay, well, here we are. It looks okay for us. I could have played rook c8, but then I guess rook c3 isn't that bad for white. But I think that we've gotten out of this pretty well. Normally, white castled, but instead of castling, they would play a3 in this type. They being like the typical good player, would play a3 here to stop my plan with take takes knight b4. Bishop d3 is an extremely logical move. Rook c8 probably like walks into some kind of computer type of sacrifice. Bishop takes a6, rook takes c1, rook takes c1. Trapping my queen. Guess queen c8 is interesting. Maybe I'm being silly. Maybe I'm being silly here. It's sometimes hard to play against this particular opponent because he plays so incredibly fast that it's hard for me to find the best move, but he's used only a minute so far. He doesn't seem to care about my advice, no matter how many times I say it. He continues to play the same way. But if he took a little more time, I think that he would do even better. But it is very hard and disheartening to play against such a fast opponent. So here I almost panicked and played a bad move with queen c8 because I saw the time ticking down to 1 minute. My preference is to maintain a good position rather than a good clock. We have a 3-second increment, so if my time does run out, that's alright. d5. I like my game here. I think black is better. This ensures I have the better pawn structure long term. We have the bishop pair, which is relevant here in this open position, basically, what will be an isolated queen pawn position. And there were other moves. I could have tried a combination with knight takes e4. I didn't really have too much time to calculate, maybe some sort of temporary sacrifice. But it's not enough time to calculate here. And d5 looks like a very obvious move. Somebody tried to research the Owens yesterday, but today I don't remember anything. There's this huge check on b5, so we could take the pawn, but that's not interesting. I'm interested in the long-term health of my position. There are also sacrifices on f7 in the air there if I didn't castle. So clearly the best move. You know, there was this temptation to attack his queen on multiple occasions, but I talk about this sometimes. It's very, very vital that you don't attack pieces that, you know, are not well placed. In this case, his queen is in a very bad position, blocking his rook on a1. It's kind of like the thing where people just check for the sake of checking. It's the same principle, you know, just to attack things for the sake of attacking them. Okay, yes, it would develop my rook, but still, more important to, we got to think quickly here. You get the point. Don't attack things for the sake of attacking them. Enough said on that subject. You understand what I'm talking about. Knight c3. He has 2 minutes to my 17 seconds now. But it's very unpleasant, you know, to constantly play against someone whose goal is to flag you on the clock. What I'm trying to teach here in the stream is to teach people to try to play the best possible moves. So it's kind of counterproductive to my philosophy, but hopefully we can prove I'm right, that the position is more important than time. This exchange of queens leaves him with no attacking chances, objectively. Although he might have real chances to draw. I think his winning chances are evaporated. Admittedly, he still has chances to draw. Two knights against two bishops. He resigns here. Why are we resigning? I don't know. Very mysterious resignation. Why did he resign? There is absolutely no reason to resign. Maybe I have a trick. I guess knight takes e4, f6, rook takes e6, king f7. If he saw that fast, you know, I mean, I got to give him credit because I can't calculate that fast. I mean, if you honestly saw knight takes e4, f6, rook takes e6, king f7 in 5 seconds, that's pretty impressive. Because I didn't calculate that quickly. He can sack the exchange, rook takes e7, king takes e7. He even has a move there, in fact. Knight takes e4, f6, rook takes e6, king f7, knight d4. So, I mean, I don't know. Kind of a weird resignation. What is this Plukro that you're mentioning there? Nezmadina versus Utelki. Telki. That's one of Babakuli Anakod's favorite words. Plu Crow. Okay, so we'll try not to get in this violent time pressure, but I'm usually like giving a speech about something totally tangential to the game for like 3 minutes of my time. Got to play unusual openings. Let's not forget. All right, e4 today. Game of Thrones warned me for years that winter was coming, and now that I'm here, I'm unprepared. And it's a brutal winter here. This is the coldest I recall it being in Budapest, as long as I've lived here. Okay, so Plukro did our work for us. He played the unusual knight to c6, or Nimzovich defense. Guys, I'm doing a weird Wednesday stream, so we're trying to play unusual openings. But let's take it to another level with the Portuguese attack. I'm just making that up, you know, because e4, e5, bishop b5 is the Portuguese opening. Or you can call it the mirror image Trompowski. Do I want to take this guy? Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of flexibility with our pawns, so I don't mind. The delayed Miles. Why delayed? I played this against Miles, you know, bishop b5 in a banter game. That was a draw. I don't remember what happened. Maybe we transposed to a Lopez. I think he played e5. You're the first to play a6 against me, Plukro. Maybe you remember me saying that. I don't know. But I think we can try to take advantage of the situation now. The Grand Prix attack. Playing the Grand Prix attack. You're not going to see this anywhere else, kids. Perhaps it would be safer to play knight to c3. Oh, you're talking about Miles playing against a6 against Karpov. Okay. I didn't get it. I'm kind of I'm kind of stupid, but you know, it's so tricky because Miles played a lot of interesting openings, and Anthony Miles, England's first grandmaster, we're talking about. Now Plukro played e5. I was actually nervous about f5. It was another very combative approach. Alright, let's see if we can make this work somehow. I wanted to try to force the King's Gambit. It's some kind of King's Gambit. Thought the dark square bishop is a bad bishop. I lost all my advantage when that knight took the bishop. Yeah, constant change. That's why everybody normally plays a3 to stop knight to b4. I was a little bit worried because I'm a tempo behind where I'd normally be with that position with colors reversed. Now here we have to be careful about pawn takes pawn. Do we? I mean, pawn takes pawn, bishop takes g1, rook takes g1, queen h4 check. And I don't know. This, like, what is this? Can I take this pawn? That looks exceedingly greedy. Take that pawn. I'm not interested. No time to calculate. This is pretty fast, 5-4. I didn't even consider knight takes... Never mind. I'm having hallucinations. It's always a bad sign when you start to have hallucinations. Bishop g4. Now I can really take this pawn. What's his plan? To, like, 97? Huh. I guess I could also play h3. Kind of a tough call. Maybe this is a little simpler. It does weaken my position a bit. But I like resolving the tension in the position. I felt really sure what's going on after pawn takes pawn. But objectively, that probably was okay. In fact, very likely good for white. Pawn takes pawn 97. I could even play c3 there. Looks like black is lost. If I had seen c3, I would have played pawn takes pawn. Perhaps he has another way to play. After pawn takes pawn, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, queen d4, trying to regain his pawn. But I'm not convinced by black's position. It's only move 7 and we're going to lose on time. You can just retreat your bishop to h5. How about retreating the bishop to h5? What do you think? That's the best choice. What's he thinking about? Well, you could retreat the bishop back here. Kind of makes sense. Quite a bit of weaknesses in my position, but I do have the dark squared bishop on the board, which is absolutely critical. This guy, to defend all these dark squares. And now pawn takes pawn. Or knight c3. Why do I want to bring his queen to a good square? Well, I guess if I'm going to gain a tempo, then it makes sense. We could also go bishop e3. Well, now that f7's hanging, he has to calculate that. But he can probably afford that. This looks like a very dangerous pawn to grab. Very dangerous pawn to grab. Bishop d2 is fine. Or bishop f4 is fine. Let's knock him off his perch on e5. We can simply castle queenside. And I like black. I like black? No, I meant to say I like white. Maybe I like black secretly. Because that's what I said, but queen g4 check. You can defend. We have a Capablanca-like endgame here. The very famous game that Capablanca won against Janowski in this exact structure. Well, Capablanca basically was able to achieve the minority attack with g5. It's a very, very famous rook ending. He plays g5, and eventually black takes on g5, and white ends up with this like massive, massive protected passed pawn on e4. It's a very, very important game for like endgame theory. Yanovsky was a tactical player, and he certainly wasn't. He wasn't famed for his endgame technique. What about this knight? Is he worth taking? Check, followed by g5. This is the pawn advance I was talking about. But I think you could take the knight. I think you could take the knight here, despite the fact that you leave black with a powerful, fairly powerful bishop. I must have missed something. I didn't think he had anything here. There's all sorts of problems. Queen, if I could just get rid of the queen on d4. Mouse slip. Dropping the piece. Mean rook f8. Oh, queen b4. This was a mouse slip. It's still a bad position. Okay, interesting opening. Poppets. And we've got to play unusual openings today. That's the theme. He is an international master for a reason. This is more or less his job. Good point. I resigned because I didn't have any winning chances. I hate when people continue to play with you when losing a piece. Thank you, Constant Change. I'm not sure you had to lose a piece there. It was weird. Like, I looked at f6 and king f7, what was it? f6, king f7, and then, like, you might have some fantastic way to save the material. Let's try to play something interesting here. Hard to do against d5. Maybe I should play immediately. Poppets from Austria. This is kind of, you're not really, making it easy for me to play an unusual opening against bishop f4. But let's try something creative, shall we? Knight c6. Maybe that's too creative. Maybe not, though. He's not really in the spirit of things, with the London system, with white. This is an unusual opening stream, Poppets, and I don't think the London system really qualifies, but we'll humor you and play against your London system. So d5, my idea here was to play e5 and hopefully get an interesting position. So that's the theme of the day anyway. Play unusual openings. This is my idea with knight c6. It may or may not be good. He took en passant. I actually expected bishop g3, knight e7, or knight b4. I mean, I guess you could take with the d-pawn here. But it's, okay, that's, then I have to take with the king on d8, and it's equal, but not very exciting. But I'm really interested, Plukro, in that position. Like, okay, your move e5 is probably okay, going into a type of double king pawn type position. But no, seriously, f5 trying to. If you had played f5 trying to undermine the white squares, it's okay. It's a little bit anti-positional in a sense. Maybe I could play something like d3 and just maintain the pawn. So white here just playing the ultra solid type of approach. Not giving me any targets to attack, basically. Should I play d5? It's a tough call. What black's move should be there? I guess there's all sorts of possibilities. Fighting for the e5 square here looks kind of important. These London system guys, they're very usually very obsessed with their one system. I'm trying to be not non-dogmatic today. e5 would change the pawn structure here radically, where my white squares start to become kind of weak. He could combat with maybe e4, but more likely probably c4. Position might be very sharp. It's better to get developed. Better to get developed here first, and then consider maybe e5. I still think he's gonna. It's like a Slav. I still think he's gonna counter me with c4. e5, c4, e4, very complicated type of continuation. Not sure if it's enough for black. e5, c4, e4, pawn takes knight. Or e5, c4, e4, knight g5. d4. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4. What is going on there? Looks like white's better. But I really have to find a way to make this bishop get in the game, so... Yeah, actually, I'm crazy. No, I shouldn't play e5, c4, e4. I should play e5, c4, d4. But that's complicated too. But I guess we have to do it. I mean, I don't really see how else I'm going to make this piece play. He doesn't have to play c4. He could play more passively with c3. Or that. But it does look passive for white. Still. Maybe not bad. Well, here I feel like black is okay. Now, I was a little bit nervous about c4. My center is still kind of... The center felt a little bit rickety there. Swesco. What variant are you playing, Swesco? What you guys talking about? Jeroen has clarified that we're playing normal chess, just unusual openings here. So now it looks like we have a good position with more space. Obviously, we can sacrifice a pawn here with e3. Pawn takes pawn, takes, queen d6. Don't have a lot of time to think about it. Poppet's also playing very fast. Kind of a thematic sacrifice in the French type of position. Poppet's with the constant change school of not using any time to try to put the other guy in time pressure. But I don't think White's position looks very safe. Having said that, I also don't think he's necessarily lost. I expected knight f1 there. Maybe this is good as well. There's 3 different pieces he can interpose on f3 to defend the e3 pawn. Black is clearly better. I don't mean that in the sense of like chess base. I meant it like it's clear that I'm better. I don't know how much better. Maybe slightly better. Maybe plus over equals. Maybe I'm plus over minus, as they say in Encyclopedia of Chess Openings talk. But it's not that obvious to me. He has clear weaknesses, right? And black structure is pretty compact. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stream today. We're playing unusual openings. In this one, it was just a strange idea against the London with knight f6, knight c6. But he played d5 here. I mean, I think this was cooperating with our concept of playing unusual openings a little bit from Poppets. I mean, I think that most people are going to play knight f3 in this position. So he kind of played along with us, I think. Perhaps knowing that he's not playing necessarily the best move there. Queen g5, white to play. Get some ECO banter. People don't even know what ECO is anymore because it's like becoming slowly irrelevant. ECO, or Encyclopedia of Chess Openings. Not as relevant now in the digital age as it once was. You had to like carry your encyclopedia of openings to the chess tournaments in the trunk of your car, like any good Yugoslav chess player. Queen e1, bishop g4, developing quickly. But the more important factor here is getting my other rook in the game. He also cuts off his own queen in this position. White isn't actually threatening anything, so we don't have to play h5. Perhaps it's better to play rook e8 first. Everything is protected. Watching improves the game. Only if you apply what you learn. Susko says, I'm trying to get a grasp of any defense I can as black. Well, Today you're going to have a harder time because we are intentionally playing like slightly offbeat, well, hopefully only slightly offbeat openings. I'm not playing my main opening repertoire, so nobody cares about the ECO anymore. Well, I was talking about this to one of my young chess students who, obviously didn't have a lot of paper books. I still think it's probably a good idea to get at least a digital copy of an opening encyclopedia, because you need a reference. So, like the lichess opening explorer, it's not enough. I mean, you really have to have a concrete opening reference book or disk or database or something. Queen f2. Good move. Although it looks insane. Walking into the discoveries. It obviously looks dangerous. Knight e4. What's going on here? Knight e4, knight e4. There's all sorts of problems with that. I don't think we can avoid playing h5. It's unfortunate because sometimes h5 might be a relevant concept. I mean, knight h5. I haven't really been talking about the fact that I'm up a pawn here. I don't think I was even conscious of it, to be honest with you guys. In most instances, I do keep track of the material, but pawn takes g4, queen f4. Seems somewhat problematic. Maybe not. Maybe not. But it is. Let's do knight takes. Anyway, this preserves my pawn structure. I was calculating pawn takes g4, queen f4, queen takes f4, pawn takes f4, rook d e2, rook d1, and I was looking at like rook takes d2, rook takes d2, knight e4, and then I realized, hey, my knight's not on the square where it can go to e4 and fork rooks. Slight problem with that variation. And even if it was, I would only be trading all my pieces down to a rook ending where I'm up a doubled pawn. So it's better to take with a knight. And I don't see, I don't want to let him play queen f4. Basically, that's a saving move. Do we have anything better than taking his queen? I mean, not taking his queen, taking on e3. This is winning for black. We're up 2 pawns. His rook is in a box. Maybe a bigger problem. Unless he has some sort of tactical. I don't think he has any kind of tactical tricks. All my pieces are protected, and my structure is good. Pretty good. So h5 is a little weakening. His rook is trapped. I was looking at, what was I looking at? Oh yeah. We'll see if he finds it, but not a lot of moves for white here, obviously. There's a nightmare. He can't protect his rook, and he's also getting back rank mated by my rooks and my knight on g4 in some lines. He's down a pawn. And only move like rook h3, rook e8, and if knight h4 mate. I could just play g6, put a rook on the 7th. Or just hang my h5 pawn and not have an advantage anymore. Good. We could always do that too. can be arranged. So I found a very interesting way of screwing this up. It takes a real genius to find a way to do that. We had a winning position. Now we barely have an advantage of any kind. I managed to hang my whole position in one move, more or less. Rook takes. Originally I was planning on knight d7, but this looks more active. I thought he had rook a3 and rook b3 before would have been even better. Because now at least I have this move. What? No, he shouldn't exchange. Should never exchange there. Under any circumstances. King and pawn endgames are very unforgiving. Now c4 wasn't enough. If he doesn't trade rooks, I don't know that I can win. Just an impulsive decision by white in time pressure. So I really almost screwed that up. Back to basics. Mickey 5-5, the unprecedented one. Chef Master. Andrea Peroni, Crystal Flame, Sleepy Mario, Perry Ode. No rated games. Perry got me. Last time he drew me for 14 rating points. Alright, back to basics. See, we're having fun. Yeah, the pawn endgame is just a panic move by white there. Back to basics. Okay, we are playing unusual openings today, so I'm going to play the birds opening. Bird opening. It's not named after a bird, it's named after Henry Bird, English master. Okay, so g6. When black does something like hyper-modern like that, I mean, you have to consider just playing e4, of course, here. It's perfectly viable. Last time I lost when I played the birds opening to one of our regular players here, Kyriakos Pez. Mongolians, missed you. Haven't been here in a while. It's good to see you grow in your community. I don't play chess anymore. Just go nowadays. Well, it's cool that you're joining us, even though you're not playing. I was thinking about learning to play the Dutch with black. But it's a big deal. I mean, the Dutch is a really tricky opening to play, and I always kind of told people that I think the Dutch is the kind of opening you need to like learn your whole life. So I don't know, maybe a little too late for me, but we can try it. So I expected black to play d5, but instead he plays d6. So that leads us into, well, what could become like a Sicilian type position with c5. Or just a kind of Pierce. Anyway, not a whole lot else we can do. Get our pieces developed. Try the transvestite opening next game. Yeah. Well, I don't play ridiculous stuff. The most ridiculous opening I've played is e4 knight h6, which I have played, believe it or not, in like an extensive number of blitz games, and I have some analysis on that. It's just a personal pet crazy opening of mine, but mostly I play standard openings that I just are a little bit like risky for my normal, compared to my normal repertoire. So the transvestite opening, like where you go e4, how does it work? You move your king and queen around? e4, queen e2, or is it e3? Queen e2, like king d1 and queen e1, is that how it works? Or king e2, queen e1, king d1, is that the idea? Here, okay, white has a lot of different variations of this, what to do here in this position. This is basically a closed Sicilian. He hasn't played c5, but in nature it's simply a sort of opening we can put in the category of closed Sicilian. I suppose I could play c4 and transpose to some kind of somewhat early f4 in the English type position. Let's just play a move. I'm on the fence here about how to play this position. I don't know. Knight c3, c3, e4. But I think this kind of position that you can play on, you don't need to know a lot of theory. In this kind of closed structure, I think it's more important to understand basic positional factors. If you understand, if you follow enough, like, or study enough Petrosian games with white, probably you could play this position without any theoretical knowledge at all. Okay, there's one issue in black's position. And I'm not saying that black's position is not okay, but we have to be aware about anytime you play a closed structure with your knight in front of your f-pawn, any kind of closed Sicilian type position, this can be a problem, the fact the knight is in front of the f-pawn. It's obstructing the pawn, and you can be a little slow. You might be a little slow to react when the critical time comes, and both sides are breaking with the classic f4, f5 type of ideas. Generally speaking, you don't want your knight in front of the f-pawn. So most often the knight would be better on e7, or black would be better off playing like maybe f5 before knight f6 or whatever. So my personal preference would have been to play c5 if I was black in this kind of position, and transpose into a closed Sicilian. Why would you close your long diagonal there? Exactly. I mean, it's not necessarily unplayable, but it wouldn't be my preference. Bishop e6. So he's asking for it here. First of all, the pawn sacrifice f5 is a pretty classic idea here. I'm not really sure if I have enough in this particular position. To justify sacrificing a pawn full on. But I suppose it's worth considering. Alright, I mean, let's try it. It's pretty risky, But it's also thematic, so I thought we will go for it. Another idea was to play knight g5. This is not a new concept. Well, he's returning the pawn with f4. Pawn takes pawn, knight takes e4. No, I expected f takes e, d takes e, bishop c4, rook f2 or something like that. This may be better. f4, he's looking for maybe pawn takes pawn, knight takes e4. This looks like it should be good for white. Looks like it should be good for white. I'm not really confident entirely here. Kind of seal off the king side with f5. I'm not sure if this is good enough. Yes, a couple moves, but I guess objectively, pawn takes f4. I think bishop g4 is debatable. I could play bishop f3. Bishop f3, queen e1, queen e1, knight to d4, queen f2 is one idea. Bishop f3, bishop h3, knight g2, black's position, I don't know, feels kind of, I don't know about this, taking here. Either recapture is possible. Rook takes f4, or bishop takes f4. I guess bishop takes f4 is more natural. Structurally, it's slightly better for white. The bishop on g4 looks kind of exposed to me. There's also the f5 weakness. My queen protects the knight on h4. There's a lot of variations we didn't really go into here. You know, there's a lot of questions to be answered. I mean, queen e1, he keeps avoiding the moves I expect. Knight e5 now. Again, an unexpected move. Which makes it a little hard for me at some moments because I can never anticipate his moves. It's kind of awkward, but nevertheless, I think that black has lost control of the center. There were just a lot of different options that I was anticipating entirely different moves on moves 11, 12, and 13. And but knight e5 now, I just don't think black has enough in the center, and f5 is bad. So this is pretty easy for white to play now. I'm not sure my position was entirely sound. From the entire beginning of the pawn sacrifice, like g takes, let's go back to f5, pawn takes f5, knight h4. f4 was interesting. He could have taken the pawn, though. After f4, g takes f4, bishop g4 was unexpected. Of course, I expected him to play knight takes e4, trying to win a pawn, but he might lose the initiative there, so he didn't do that. And then e takes f4 surprised me, then knight takes e5 surprised me, and now knight g6. I don't want to trade knights and fix the structure. Obviously, my intention is to play knight f5 when white has a sizable advantage and possibly nearly decisive positional advantage between the f-file and the pawn structure, and the bishop on g4 being like exposed. I mean, I suppose there may be some way for black to defend this. Maybe it's not lost, but it's clearly better for white now. Of course he had knight takes e4. I mean, this is the first move that I analyzed before I played that Rouse the Time. It's not that clear. White sacrifices a pawn for a pretty strong initiative after bishop takes e4, queen takes h4, f5. Black's position looks somewhat dangerous with white having f6 threats and the queen on h4 getting trapped in some positions. It's understandable that he didn't necessarily want to try to win that pawn. I'm not really sure. I couldn't come up with a definitive evaluation, but I thought that I had pretty good compensation after knight takes e4, bishop takes e4. Rather than d takes e4, closing my bishop's diagonal, bishop takes e4, and also not giving him bishop c4. I'll have f5, his bishop will have to retreat back along c8, d7 diagonal. He doesn't have much coordination. There are threats of knight to d5. It's quite a dangerous situation if he decided to do that. Let's just make a random move, for lack of a better name. Random move. Developing a piece, though. I'm sure that I had better somewhere. There was an interesting line to take on g7 and bring his king out, to pop his king out to f6, like rook takes f6. I didn't see anything clear. This bishop is, I can certainly take it at some point. It's a good defender. It's his best defender. And therefore he decided to chop my knight off before I got another chance at that. Pawn takes. So it looks like he can organize some kind of defense here. Knight g4. I'm about to lose on time. My goodness. Oh. That's a lot of things on d4. Let's just take the exchange. With my bad bishop, he was able to organize quite a bit of counterplay. This piece not being particularly good. Okay, so anyway, it was a messy game, and it raises very important strategic questions about the whole issue of the knight on f6, and I think that's what we can take away from it. Not like who made a tactical mistake here and there. The concept of the knight on f6 not being able to meet f4 with f5, and the concept of sacrificing a pawn with f5 is a dangerous one where white can play for the initiative. Mickey 55 played the other day with me 2 classical Sicilians, ironically. After e4. You've got to give squares to get squares. Give pieces to get pieces. Let's play... I was thinking about this move, actually, e3. I don't think I've ever played this on the stream, but kind of interesting transpositional move. We can play birds opening. Now he played d5. Maybe b3. Then we'll have another one of those Owen's defenses. Let's try something different. D5 is good. Perhaps the Queen's Indian attack. This is the best order of moves for black. Probably knight f6 there, not playing c5 right away. Oh, I thought about a new opening I want to try on the stream here. Okay. Not this game, but in the future game with black, I have an interesting idea I want to use. We are going to need someone to play d4. We're going to need someone to play d4 against me when I'm black. So Queen's Indian attack. f4 for the win, as usual. Yeah, f4 is perfectly good there. So black played e6. If I get to play an early knight e5, maybe we'll play... maybe we can play f4, Ewan. Although in this particular position, I'm afraid that knight e5 just allows a trade of pieces. Nevertheless, it's not a bad move for white. We do need to do something. What I call the Raoul maneuver with the knight here is not that stupid, actually, in this particular situation. That's one way of solving the problem of the bad Queen's Indian knight. This knight is always a problem in the Queen's Indian. Sometimes has to go to a3 or a6 when you're black. Passive on d2, so rolling the knight across, rolling over, you might call it, with this knight c3, knight e2, knight g3. Fairly reasonable here, I would think. Let's try it. We've already telegraphed our intention, but we could also play bishop b5. Bishop d7, this move not particularly appropriate unless I've played bishop b5, I would think. And knight f4. Knight f4 is okay, but it's It's blocking the f-pawn, right? I don't want to block my f-pawn. Knight e4. This is just a tactical blunder. I mean, perhaps he intends to sacrifice something. But we have to take. And we simply win a pawn. 2 pawns if rook takes h7. What about f6? Yeah, I mean, my bishop might get trapped. I'm going to pull this back. Rook takes h7, f6. I guess that's pretty close to helpmate, in fact. But actually, if we did play rook takes h7, f6, I guess we have knight g5 in that position. Basically winning by force. So I suppose I should have taken the second pawn. Oh well. Queen c1 here. Queen c1 is worthy of consideration. Rather than developing his pieces for him. Queen c1, e5, bishop b5. Or queen c1, e5, d4. You could also play d4. I mean, that actually makes some sense. There's no e5. He would set it up consequently. A lot to think about, really. This pawn is just en prise. I could just take a second pawn. But like, where do you draw the line between taking all this material? You know, do you take a second pawn and fall behind in development in this position? Bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, rook takes h7, castles or e5. Now I'm up 2 pawns, but black's starting to get like a real development advantage. So that's the point. So we have to really try to find a compromise. I guess d4. Positionally, this feels like the best. Trading off my bad bishop, then putting my pawns on the dark squares. Rook g7. The e5 is more dynamic for black, but he's afraid of losing another pawn. So that's understandable. And then bishop b5. Trading pieces. And clamping down on the e5 square. And that should be pretty much strategically fatal for black. He can play on. He has, you know, some chances, I guess. He played a really tough game against me yesterday off the stream. It was really weird because I played the line in the classical Sicilian called the Caraclage variation. And what is this language? Serb, right? Or a Serbian. So ironically, right, he's Serbian. I played the Caraclage against him, who I met in Belgrade. He's passed away. He was a theoretician, a Serbian theoretician. But ironically, right, the guy is Serbian. I played a Serbian opening against him. He played it against me, like, later in the afternoon, which was really strange, because with black he reacted badly, and then maybe he went home and studied it, because he came back in the evening and played the same variation against me with the colors reversed, and played it really, really well. He eventually blundered a piece, but he played it like he'd been playing it all his life. It was really funny. So here we're going to just play like a French defense, I guess. This is a French defense. Queen a5, dark squares are weak a little bit for black here. Our knight might get kicked out. That's fine. It can bounce back to d3. It's not Serbian, then what is it? It's not Serbian. It's not... what is that? Don't keep me in the dark. Can somebody tell me what language this is? It's like Cyrillic, but it's not Russian. It's not Bulgarian. So I was guessing it was like Serbian. I don't know how many other Cyrillic languages are there. If it's not Russian or Bulgarian, we're running out of Cyrillic languages. Queen e7. My apologies that I was wrong, apparently. Let's guess Ukrainian then. It's not. I mean, that's not what it says for Ukrainian usually. You can maybe right-click the name. That's what I was doing, but I don't know. My guess was Serbian. Somebody must know. I know that the language is called Serbo-Croatian, but apparently I was wrong altogether. Czech Republic, no, that's Sestina. It's not Czech. Nobody here can guess, but someone decisively told me I'm wrong. That's what I thought. But who's the person who said I was wrong? GBRBBS. Well, GBRBBS, if you're so sure that I'm wrong, then you would know what it is. Alright, we are getting into really bad time pressure now. 1 minute. We could trade queens, or try to trade queens with queen b4. I guess this forces an exchange of queens. I thought we'd up the ante a little bit on the pawn weaknesses first. Obviously that other guy was wrong. It says Serbia in his profile. Shows you what I know. I'm actually right. Yeah, well, that's what you get for questioning me. Queen b4. So there's something rewarding about like thinking you're wrong and then realizing that you were right after all. It's kind of like losing something and then finding it again. Alright, Mickey 5-5. He just blundered his g7 pawn, playing too quickly. The unprecedented one. By the way, I mean, I don't think that my maneuver there with like knight to c3, this is not objectively the best move. But I feel that against this passive setup with e6, it's sort of justified. It is a problem piece strategically for white in this opening, so. Unprecedented one. It's unprecedented to play you. on my stream here. What happens if you play queen d3 on turn 16? Seems that you can win 2 pawns on h7 and f7. Very possible. Although I think that position is lost for black. It's just too clear strategically. It didn't matter. Unprecedented one is... Welcome to my weird Wednesday stream where we're playing unusual openings. Now with black, I wanted somebody to play d4. d4 and c4, like a standard d4, c4. If there's a d4, c4 player out there in our list, Andrea Peroni usually plays e4. Perry Ode, if we get to that challenge and he's white, he might be able to play... Last time he played the Catalan, though, I might not get to play the opening I wanted to play today, I'm afraid. Okay, unprecedented one. Let's play e4, e5. Modern defense, you asked too late. Wow, he played the King's Gambit. Okay, so as a tribute to one of my... Well, it's too early to tribute, because we need white to play. Tribute to one of my recent students, I was going to try an unusual line here, but he played bishop c4. I was hoping for knight f3. Well, anyway, bishop c4. I don't really like queen h4 check, and I like it when I'm white, so we'll play the standard move. An interesting line I did play once on the stream here is bishop e2. A very rare move I discovered in Bronstein's 200 Open Games. But d5 is the reliable defense to bishop c4. I don't consider myself a theoretician or in any sense, and certainly not an expert in the King's Gambit, but I've played a fair number of offhand blitz games for both sides. Somehow can't connect to lichess anymore. I would think you shouldn't have that problem. Is your internet okay? Just try refreshing. E takes d. So I guess here we have several options. It seems to me that the main line is probably bishop d6, defending the pawn on f4. But I would imagine there's many options. You could probably play knight f6, targeting the pawn. This seems like the extent of my knowledge on this variation, probably. Unprecedented one. He's got quite a low rating. 1468. But he's scaring me in the opening here with the King's Gambit. It's not like I play this position every day, guys. I'm gonna sit here and think on this a little bit. I don't know what the main move is in this position. I'm only guessing. Knight e7 seems logical. It's more passive than knight f6, but you can go to g6 to protect the pawn on f4. It blocks checks on the file. Another plan is bishop g4, pinning the knight, and preparing further queenside development with knight to d7. I don't know. One of the most ironic plans might be for black to play c6. I mean, it seems strange. It definitely seems strange to blockade this pawn on d5 and then play c6, but are we blockading, or are we just developing with bishop d6, and do we want to just blow up that pawn on d5? And what's the deal? I mean, if I let that bishop become active again on this diagonal, there are a lot of questions, more questions than answers in chess. Knight c3. So already I kind of regret not playing knight f6 because he's got e4. Nice arrow. He's got e4 under control now. But let's just develop quickly. I just realized that I'm like vibrating. Do you hate when people do that at the table? They're like shaking the board. The nervous habit of like shaking your legs. That's really irritating. When the other guy you're playing in a tournament is like vibrating the whole table. I'm doing that right now. I don't know why. I guess I feel nervous in this King's Gambit type position, which I don't normally play. Bishop g4, he can unpin with queen e1. But I still feel like that's somewhat appropriate. I gotta get my pieces out. Although knight d7 is also okay. Nothing wrong with that other than the fact that it blocks my bishop. Alright. We're getting in time pressure. Blind Dragon, okay. Scared of the King's Gambit, that's a first? Really? Yeah, I guess you're being ironic. Is it true that GMs or IMs usually do more preparation before tournaments on openings than other players, which give them the advantage? Is it possible to do good without doing prep for a tournament? Well, I mean, I think underestimated DST is the luck factor in chess, just as in poker. There's a certain amount of luck, you know. Will people just blunder against you? You know, will you play the strongest players in the tournament, or will you get a lucky pairing and play someone who you've beaten like 10-0 in the past? I mean, of course it's possible to do good, to do well, when you're not as well prepared as most players in the opening. It also depends on your style. Some players are more reliant on getting an opening advantage than others. So, I mean, I'm not the most preparation heavy player at all. d4. I just want to get my pizzas developed as quickly as I can here. e5, controlling e5. My bishop on d6, I mentioned earlier, knight e4. I have lost some games a long time ago in these type of King's Gambits. I remember losing one game in particular. You've got to be careful that this central majority doesn't get out of control, like c4, d4, d5. But it is pretty slow to unwind, obviously. Queen d3, unpinning. We have bishop f5 for whatever that's worth. Maybe a lot. It would leave my bishop on a weird square. I'm just stopping any kind of knight g5, protecting my f-pawn. e5 is obviously under control. Maybe this is a mistake, though, to go knight f6 or not. unprecedented one. He's precedenting himself. I mean, he's playing pretty well. Maybe he has a King's Indian specialist. I mean, I'm King's Indian, King's Gambit, but, you know, you don't meet a lot of 1400s who play the King's Gambit. I thought it was just something that he was playing for the stream, because I usually play the King's Gambit sometimes in the Weird Wednesday stream, and this is the first time I've played this player. Of course I'm afraid of the King's Gambit, man. It's a very irrational type of positions that I don't normally play. You know, we're all afraid of darkness and strangeness and things that we're not, you know, used to. That's why I took that comment earlier to be ironic. Knight f6 with the idea of queen d7 was my first plan. Maybe we'll stick with it. I'm getting kind of low on time here. We also give ourselves some bishop retreats, but there is a very important issue about the e5 square. I could always exchange his knight on f3 if I have to fight for control of e5. Yeah, he was being ironic. I'm just catching up. Better than people twirling pieces. Up and comer, I agree 100%, man. The twirling pieces is extremely, extremely irritating. And you have every right to, like, ask the tournament director to, like, stop them from doing that. Rather than, like, pissing yourself off, if it's at all a professional tournament of any kind, you know, even in, like, a chess club tournament, you should be able to ask the director to, like, say something to the guy. Rather than interposing yourself in the situation, I think the ethical thing to do, and rather than, like, getting yourself in a fight with the player in question, I think the best thing to do, actually here I have to watch out. Rook e8. Rook e8 or not? Maybe queen f6 is a new idea. I think you should just ask the tournament director, arbiter, to say something. If it's bothering you, the twirling pieces at the board, yeah, that's like typical gamesmanship. In many cases, they're just ignorant, you know. But some people would do it on purpose to, like, piss you off. So that goes in the category of kicking your feet or putting their feet under your chair. There was a guy at the last tournament I played in here in Hungary who was just really ignorant. You know, he wasn't doing these things on purpose. He was just, like, ignorant and didn't realize what a jerk he was, you know. So this particular player did like 5 or 6 different type of behaviors that were extremely difficult for me and other players to deal with at the board. But again, it depends on the individual. You know, some people will do things on purpose to, like, irritate you. Others just don't have a clue that twirling pieces, like, on your thinking time is irritating. It's okay to do it in the chess cafe, you know. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people will bring behaviors from, like, informal type of situations to the formal environment. So if they're used to playing in the chess cafe and they're twirling their pieces, nobody's gonna, like, question their twirling the pieces if it's, like, an informal game at the chess cafe. So they just do it anyway, like it was the same situation. No, the twirling pieces, like, right in front of your, like, line of sight while you're actually trying to concentrate is pretty high on the list of irritating behaviors. Once I was sitting there at the New York Open and a friend of mine was playing against Grandmaster Tony Miles, and nothing like that happened, but it was a visual, like, irritation issue again. Like, Miles was trying to concentrate and my friend had gone to Dunkin' Donuts and bought this, like, massive mega coffee. Like, it was basically, like, you know how they are, like the largest coffee you can buy at the donut shop. So he put it down, like, directly in front of himself. It was like towering over the board, you know. And most people wouldn't have been irritated by it, but Miles was very upset by it, and he was very like gentlemanly in a way. I mean, he didn't even say a word. He just actually reached across the board, like into the other side's territory, picked up my friend's coffee without saying a thing, and like just moved it off to the side of the board. You know, normally you would maybe say something, can you move that? It's distracting me, but Miles just took it upon himself. And my friend was like freaked out. He didn't know what was happening. Like he saw Miles's hand like coming across the board, and he didn't know what was going on. Like the guy was resigning, or he was like offering a draw, and then suddenly his coffee was moving. It was just really a funny situation. What's going on here? We've got reconnecting. Uh-oh. Looks like lichess is down. I'm disconnected. But that usually means the site is down. No, it's my turn. Thank you. So, we've won the battle for the center. Material is equal, but the battle for the center goes to black. I really wanted to keep this F rook here along the F file. I'm pretty congested at the moment, but ultimately there was a chance that the play opens up along the F file. So, and now for our next trick, I guess we start to pressurize the D5. But the unprecedented one, playing extremely solid chess for his rating level. I'm a little concerned about rook e1, actually. He's also about to win on time. Bishop takes f3 was possible, but then again, pawn takes f3. Yeah, I guess there I could have played bishop takes f3, won a pawn. Should be a little more alert. Bishop takes f3. Rook takes e8. Yeah. He could do it as a pawn sacrifice, but I don't think it's really sound. Now knight d2. Dropping the c2 pawn. So he finally came unglued. But once again, I think that he played pretty well to a point. For his rating, for 1468 here, the first 15 moves were quite solid. People tend to panic even with the increment when they get under a minute, even reasonably strong players. But I think in general, if you want to move, speaking of like etiquette, I mean, if you want to move somebody something, I almost got into a fight with Nena Chulava once. It was kind of weird. It was the same as the coffee thing, but he picked up my like MP3 player or Walkman or whatever. Like, it was on my side of the board. It was a Walkman. It wasn't like a big towering coffee, and like he had to like move that. It was kind of strange. I didn't understand like why moving like a little electronic device was. This is a long time ago. That was so important, but it was the same kind of thing where he like picked up an object on my side of the table and moved it like without saying anything. It's kind of weird. Chef Master 7-3, guys. We have time for 2 more games. Almost got flagged. He kind of smelled funny too. Well, smelling funny is one of the things that was the 6 irritating things about my irritating opponent at my last tournament. He had a very, very strong alcohol odor, which, you know, I'm not against, but it was like on top of the other 5 irritating things, it was kind of like the icing on the cake. Chef Master, I'm playing e4. Maybe we'll play a King's Gambit ourselves. Um, but unfortunately, the smell of our opponents we can't really complain to the arbiter about. Maybe the tournament organizer would be a better place to go. E4, D5. No King's Gambit here. We have to take. Knight C3 would transpose to the Van Geet, as our Dutch moderator insisted. Who is Dunst, anyway? Knight C3 on move 1. One of those openings that has like 4 different names. Well, I guess we've got to do something original here. I mean, the Scandinavian's so popular now with even Magnus Carlsen playing it. I know there's a gambit here with B4, but I've played this. This is Elvest's move. I just call it Elvest's move because he used it to beat Ricardo de Guzman once at a game I was there for. It makes a lot of sense, actually. I mean, we get the rook on an active file and play for B5. The game Elvest de Guzman wasn't all that convincing. I mean, it just kind of felt like... It felt like Elvest won because he was Elvest. De Guzman is like a pretty strong Filipino IM, around 2,500 US, so it wasn't like he beat some weak player. But it's an interesting way of avoiding the main lines. You get pressure along the B file, but objectively probably not that dangerous. Chess players are strange. So in general, it's a pretty strange subculture. Up-and-comer. I mean, I've been to a lot of poker tournaments as well. And that's strange as well. I mean, those people are strange usually slightly in a different way. But, you know, anytime you get, like, conventions of people... I mean, I imagine, like, a science fiction convention would also be pretty bizarre. It's not the average subset of human beings at the chess tournament, so you do get some odd characters. Usually they're oftentimes slightly socially inept, socially awkward, people who've been living in their basement playing chess for 30 years or something. I'm just kidding. All right, bishop h5 there. I played h3. The move wasn't absolutely necessary, but I felt bishop d6 was coming, and I was going to need to do that anyway. So I decided to just preempt black. Knight d4. Knight d4 is possible. d3. d3 is possible. There's no pin. The nice thing about rook b1, it does take away these annoying bishop b4 type concepts. Why am I hesitating so long on this move, you might ask? d3. d3, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, queen e5, check is the problem. Then knight e4, yuck. Okay, so I guess we have to castle. Yeah, I was thinking about something pretty irrelevant there. Guys, last 2 games for the stream today. Has anyone been to an erotica convention? Thanks for bringing that up, because that goes to some dubious territory. Always in the chat, we like that. Yeah, it's good to see the bikers at the chess tournament. I agree. It's okay, DST. I think you should ask Penn and Teller or something. I don't know. Bishop e7. There was an article about Carrie Fisher at an erotica convention not that long ago. That's how she met one of the dudes from the comedy duo Penn and Teller. But I think that we should steer clear of the sort of questionable topics here, since we have such a predisposition to collect trolls on the stream. Never been to one of those myself. Probably never will. Bishop e7. Rook e1. How about the file? Chef Master has this amazing time advantage. He just doesn't care. It's the same theory. We've got a lot of opponents who are from the same school of, we don't give a shit about trying to play the best move. The important thing is just playing fast. That's what we try to preach here. At some point I'm going to have to take on c6. I mean, this is just enough tension. Enough tension in the situation. Pawn takes c6. I don't want to develop his pieces for him. That's my whole issue with, like, taking on c6, helping him develop his pieces with knight takes c6. Knight d4, perhaps. Then my knight ends up in an exposed position. d3. And Chef Master's played this very, very sensibly. Although maybe this whole variation is discussed in some Scandinavian books, I wouldn't think that it would be a major topic of conversation in all the Scandinavian texts on how to play black in the Scandinavian. Oh, the rook b1 variation. Yeah, very important. Don't forget how to handle that. I think he's done better than de Guzman did against Elvest. d3 weakens my knight. I guess I could play bishop b2. Yeah, I'm not going to lose on time, don't worry, guys. I'm just kind of frustrated with this position. What about the Tim and Karpov? 11, 10, 9, 8. Alright, I've got to just do something here. Knight h4. Wow. See, that's the kind of move that I like to see. B. Chef Master just... Dude, why are you playing to, like, flag me on the clock? An increment game. That's so strange. So you never, ever, ever play for time when the other guy has increment. That's how I lost to Teddy Coleman once. That was right after having food poisoning, and I hadn't eaten in like 24 hours, and I was really, 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 really tired. And I finally lost my patience and tried to flag him with the increment. This is like back in 2003 when increments were starting to really get popular in tournaments. But Black had a perfectly good position there until b6. Okay, so we're never going to get to play our secret opening we wanted to try with black against d4. We'll save it for the real stream tomorrow. Why is the stream running at... That's just the webcam. Minecraft Con also correlates with chess viewers on Twitch. You're just saying that like in general? I think any kind of game is gonna correlate. Poker, Minecraft, video games, whatever you want. I mean, games are games. You know, people who like to play games, whether it's a video game or chess or poker. So Andrea Peroni, thank you for playing an interesting opening here. Oh, it's escaped me now. What do they call this gambit? It's like he's trying to do what they do in the Scotch, like induce me to weaken myself. Does anybody really understand that, by the way? Like, I'm not sure. I'm an international master. I still don't fully understand, like, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop b4 check. That's apparently, like, a real variation. I don't think I quite understand, you know, why you voluntarily want to, like, play bishop b4 check and induce white to play c3, hitting your bishop, but they do it anyway. I'll have to speak to an expert to fully appreciate why that is. I put that arrow there. I didn't really mean to do that. I was just kind of like playing with the arrows. E4 is probably a good move, though, ironically. It was my subconscious doing that. E4, queen h4, queen f3 looks okay for white, eh? Although I guess knight f3 is more standard. Rafa asks the eternal question, why you play versus 1582 ELO? Rafa, because I draw the line at 1784. You see, we all suck compared to Kasparov, Rafa. That's the basic truth in life, or Magnus Carlsen. So, shall I draw the line at 1782, or maybe 2003, or 2284, 2467? Like, where exactly should I draw the cutoff for the players that I play and the players I don't play? Since we all suck compared to Magnus Carlsen or Garry Kasparov, I think it would be kind of unfair to draw a line somewhere in the sand, you know? We're all just holding Phil Ivey's money. D5, and black is down a piece. This is not a good game, and I think e4 might be justified here. Since I'm up a piece, I'm going to be generous to liberate my pieces, liberate my bishop on f1. He forgot it's not like, what is it, 3 check or whatever? Kasparov was a chump. No, I remember I was 1500 at one point, and 1200 before that. So we have to remember our place. I think it's very important. I want to develop the king side, to manually castle here as quickly as possible. I was prepared for this. Now we could sacrifice all our pieces, but I think it's better not to do that. Although maybe honestly, I mean, even king g3 is not an absurd idea for white here. Having played that in a lot of maybe that's the best move if you put this on a computer it'll probably spit out king g3. Although the queen has this lateral ability to move across here, none of those squares are really controlled. I mean, king g3, queen e6, what is this, like a one-move threat? I mean, h3, so I probably messed up. I should play king g3, bishop d7. Well, bishop d7 wasn't my main concern, but he is stopping queen a4. So we've got to be prepared. Actually, rook e1, I guess. Guarding the e5 pawn in advance. And now we can do a lot of things. He's not actually threatening anything. That's not true entirely. Knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, queen takes d4. Would be a little awkward. So, I mean, if nothing else, I can move my bishop again. Bishop b5. It's one way to defend your hanging pawn. Yeah, but with bishop takes, you don't have any dynamism anymore. There's no c5. I mean, I think you should play c5 there. Now we just walk away, and black has nothing. 3 checks and you lose. No, I mean, I don't draw any limits with the rating of players that I play in the stream here. So, because you start making discriminations like that, where do you stop? You know, who am I to say, like, I don't know, a 1600 is good, but a 1400 sucks. You know, how would I feel if, like, Kasparov said, like, oh, I will only play with 2600, 2400 sucks. You know, so guys, we have time for one more game after this. I mean, this game was not well played by our hero Andrea, sacrificing a piece on f2 totally unsoundly. We're going to... I'm not going to tell him that he played well, because he didn't. I mean, this is just a ridiculous sacrifice. So I do play all rating levels, but I won't lie and say you played well if I didn't think you did. Let's develop our pieces and end this game. a4... Okay, we'll just trade it off. And now we have one less piece to worry about. He will open the d file. Andrea is a little too aggressive. He likes to sacrifice pieces unsoundly. He needs to tone it down. It's fine to be aggressive, but you have to know your limitations. He knows better than to sacrifice a piece on f2 in that kind of situation. This, now maybe an exchange sacrifice? No. Alright. His queen is running short of squares. But I will play one more game. Though Wednesday is a busy day. He's missing queen takes d4 check, winning the game. Don't joke about that. Now you have problems. Anyway, all right. This was an entertaining game, but not remotely correct. As you guys know. Where's the fastest mate in this position? Did I find the fastest mate? Still not mate. Still not mate just yet. But normally we don't, have games like this where people are just sacrificing a piece on move 3. I mean, that's... I want to thank Periotti for challenging me to unrated. Last time we had a rated game, which I try to avoid because I'm kind of handicapped by the chatter and crazy questions you guys ask. Can you go back to the pin with the queen and the knight? A GM lost to a low-rated player, and a lower-rated player offered a rematch. The GM said, "No rematch, your rating is too low," despite his opponent being 2,500. Yeah, a lot of people of all rating levels are idiots. Okay, so d4, knight f6. Last time it was a Catalan. He played an unusual line in the Catalan. Oh, I get to play what I wanted to play, finally. This was played against me, I think in some obscure book this was discussed. Maybe like an Eric Schiller book, like an old publication. They called it the Gingy Indian. Maybe the original Gingy Indian. And Michael Valvo played this against me in the New York Open when I was like a 2300. I was totally like disturbed by this move, a6. Periotti didn't even like give it a moment's thought. I think I might have also played knight f3 against Valvo. After knight c3, the idea is for black to play c5, d5, b5, and turn it into a kind of Benko gambit. Does anybody know an opening name for this a6? I think Schiller called it the Gingy Indian in this one book from the 80s. We could play b5. We could also wait with that and play e6 first. Maybe this is a little more solid. But Periotti seems unfazed. Perioda. I'm trying to pronounce it. As an American, it's not easy. Perry is, of course, not a problem. So b5. I guess that we're in the realm of kind of known territory here again. It's a form of Polish defense, I guess. The derp sounds like a good idea. What's your favorite variant and why is it Horde? Yeah, I think my only favorite variant is Chess 960. I never got into chess variants really. I mean, I was a chess coach for like high school kids, and I used to play Bug House. So, not really got into it though. I mean, never really into it. I guess Crazy House. If I had to play, if I was forced to play a variant here, other than Chess 960, I would play Crazy House. I think I did back in the day, play some Crazy House games on other sites, but I'd rather just perfect one game rather than start playing variants of that. So d takes c4, rook a7, b takes c4, I mean. He has b takes c4, knight e5. Catalan expert. I'm really thinking needlessly here. I mean, I think that bishop b7 is gotta be It's got to be the right move. And how can anything but bishop b7 really be correct? So then b3. Okay. Guys, in advance, I want to thank you for joining me here. This is the last game for today. I do have a YouTube channel where I upload all the streams called Video Chess Training on YouTube. Appreciate if you check that out. Also, anyone who contributes to the stream, I really appreciate it. We need support here for the YouTube channel and my stream. So I thank those of you who have contributed already. In 2017, we had several generous donations. And finally, I want to mention that I'm available for private training and lessons. If you're interested, please message me here on lichess, or even better yet, send me an email. And my email is videochesstrainer@gmail.com. Back to the game after this commercial message. Not a position I'm really accustomed to playing too much. It's interesting to think about b4 in this position because he's really kind of tied up. Generally speaking, the b4 maybe not that great, but I think in this particular position it's kind of viable because his knight has no good squares to go to, and a3 can be met by a5. a5 anyway is probably a good move. On the other hand, maybe development would be appropriate. Though d5, I can play that at some point if he threatens to play e4. c5 is an aggressive and double-edged decision here. I think it's kind of risky for black. A tad risky. All in all, it's a really tough call. I mean, I've got all these candidate moves. Bishop b2 just played quickly. I'm leaning toward d5. I think I should wait, until appropriate moment. If I'm going to play d5, we can wait. Is e4 a threat? That's a big question here. e4, knight takes e4. It doesn't appear to be a threat. We'll wait until it's a threat, and then we'll respond to it. And now it's a threat. Now we go d5. Basically a Catalan. We're a little bit weakened on the queen side on the c line, but I don't think that it's that big a deal right here. Knight e5. It's a natural move. Knight d7. I'm a little concerned about the c6 square. Maybe. And this guy's already drawn me once. Knight d7. Pawn takes pawn. Actually, knight d7 is okay. White's play is really aesthetic, isn't it? Queen c2, bishop b2, bishop g2, rook c1, all the standard moves. But now we could play c5. C6 looks like the sensible move. This is ultra solid, but it's kind of passive. I'm not that concerned about this bishop because I have all the space with a5. I mean, my bishop can free itself on a6 at a later time. So this is not, this piece is not going to be sentenced to death because it's blocked by the c6 pawn. Ultimately, it will be able to free itself via a6. There's a difference between a position where like my pawns are back on, b7 and a7 and my bishop's on c8 and it's a bad piece forever. But here I have a lot of space with a5 that I wouldn't normally have. So I think that black's position it's a little bit passive, but I think it's okay. And now he decided to take on e6. Which leads us to a critical decision now. He could sacrifice a piece with knight takes e5, pawn takes e6. I guess there are some tactical tricks here. Well, if I take on d5, that's the most solid, I suppose. Queen c7, knight takes e5. What would Peter Leko would draw this with black? It's very solid. Yeah, this is no choice. This is not a prize. My b7 bishop is not a prize. I don't mind parting ways with that piece. And even though white has more space, we should have counterplay with a4. And as far as my knight goes, knight d7 loses a piece. We have to go maybe knight f6 or knight g6 or knight g4 here. Knight g6 is awkward, but does guard the e7 bishop. Knight g4 is more natural square for the piece. But this guy has been pretty impressive. I mean, the first game against me played really well. This game also, I feel like I've been pushed to my limit. I'm not sure he can really make headway very easily here. Typical Catalan situation. Bishop d6, rook d7, queen b8. Or queen b8. Queen c6. Rook d8. But he's only used like 3 minutes. Quite impressive. I'm just trying to time some kind of counterplay with a4. Anyway, it's a good thing this one isn't rated as well. Rook d8 only move. Fortunately, it should hold. I'm shoring up the control of e4, which was an issue in some positions here. I'm shadowing his king on this diagonal. Maybe I can scare him. Kind of scare him somehow. There's nothing really objectively there. Maybe I should go for a4. Trying to get some counterplay. My only hope is opening a file for my rook, which it desperately needed. This guy plays like a master. But maybe the position was just too easy for white. Sometimes people seem a lot stronger than they are if you just put them in the kind of position they like to play. You know, I think we've had 2 Catalans against this opponent, and he's obviously very comfortable in said position. Bishop b5. Wow. I guess the time kind of bothers me too. He's very, very fast. Bishop a4. Wow. I'm trying to make an illegal move. We're 15 minutes over the stream here, over the maximum. I think I can hold this. We could obviously torture me for a while. This is a draw. Alright, thank you for the game. So guys, we'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. CET, with more Classical and Blitz here on lichess and Twitch. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to get going because it is way over time, and we've got a lot of stuff to do, a busy Wednesday. So I will see you guys tomorrow, and thank you.